Her heart pounded in her chest as she clutched the faded letter in her hand, his words echoing in her ears like a haunting melody. I will come back for you, my love. No matter how far away or how long it takes, our love will endure. His name was Thomas, and he had been the love of her life, her rock, her everything. They had met when she was just 16, he was 18, and they fell in love like two souls recognizing each other after a lifetime of searching. But their idyllic world was shattered when Thomas, a soldier, was sent off to fight in a war that seemed to drag on forever. Every day she waited for him, hoping against hope that he would return. But as the years turned into decades, her hope began to dwindle, replaced by a deep and aching despair. Yet she never gave up on him, not completely. She held on to his promise, the one he had made to her right before he left. I will come back for you, no matter how far away or how long it takes, our love will endure. She was now an old woman, her hair as white as snow, her face a map of time's relentless march. But in her heart, she was still the young girl who had fallen in love with a soldier who had promised to come back to her, but he never did. Thomas had been gone for 40 years, for decades of her life spent in waiting. The once vibrant colors of her world had faded to gray, mirroring the bleakness of her heart, the laughter of children, the warmth of the sun on her skin, the taste of her favorite foods. All of it had become a distant memory, a painful reminder of a life once lived. Her only solace was the faint hope that flickered within her like a candle in the wind, the hope that one day Thomas would return to her. She had refused to marry another, to love another, because her heart belonged to Thomas. She had turned down countless suitors, each one more desperate than the last, all offering her a life that she didn't want, a life without Thomas. As the years dragged on, the villagers began to whisper, their words like daggers piercing her already wounded soul. She's lost her mind, waiting for a ghost. He's not coming back. She should move on. Their words were harsh, their tone laced with disdain, but she paid them no heed. She knew in her heart that Thomas would return. She could feel it in her bones. Then one day, a stranger arrived in the village. He was tall and handsome, with eyes that twinkled with kindness and a smile that could melt the coldest of hearts. His name was Ethan, and he was a captain in the army. He had heard stories about the old woman who waited for a soldier who never came back, and he had come to see her, to offer her comfort, to tell her to move on. When he first approached her, she recoiled, her heart pounding in her chest, her breath catching in her throat. She had not wanted to see another suitor, to hear another kind words, to feel the weight of another's pity. But Ethan was different. He didn't try to force himself on her. He didn't offer her empty platitudes. He simply sat by her side and listened as she poured out her heart, telling him about Thomas, about the war, about the life that had been stolen from her. And as she spoke, Ethan felt a deep sense of empathy wash over him. He understood her pain, the way it twisted and contorted her face, the way it made her hands tremble. He had seen it before, too many times, in the eyes of the soldiers he had led into battle. The pain of loss, the agony of separation, the despair of knowing that some things could never be reclaimed. When she finished speaking, Ethan didn't try to change her mind. He didn't tell her to forget about Thomas or to look to the future. He simply sat there, holding her hand, letting her tears fall onto his shoulder. And in that moment, she felt something she had long forgotten, human touch, the warmth of another person's presence, the comfort of knowing that she was not alone. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan stayed by her side, becoming a constant fixture in her life. He helped her with chores, listened to her stories, and never, ever pressured her to move on. One day, as they were sitting by the window watching the sunset, Ethan finally broke the silence. You know, he said softly, you don't have to wait for him anymore. It's been 40 years. It's time to let go. She looked at him, her eyes filled with pain and resignation. He promised me he'd come back, she whispered, her voice hoarse with emotion. And I've waited my whole life for him. How can you ask me to forget about him? Ethan sighed. He knew that she was right. He knew that Thomas had made a promise to her and that she had waited for him for decades. But he also knew that she needed to move on for her own sake, for her own happiness. I understand that he promised you, he said gently, but promises are meant to be kept, and he hasn't kept his promise. Yet, it doesn't mean he never will. But you can't keep waiting forever. You deserve to be happy too. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I don't want to be happy without him. I don't want to live without him. I want him back. Ethan pulled her into a hug, his heart breaking at the sight of the old woman crying on his shoulder. He knew that nothing he said would change her mind, that she was too far gone to be saved. So he simply held her, letting her cry, letting her grieve, letting her remember. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, Ethan became a part of her life, a constant presence in her old and lonely world. He read to her from books, sang her songs, and told her stories of the outside world. He brought her flowers and sat with her as she tended to her garden, asking her questions about her past, about her life before the war, before Thomas had been taken away from her. One day as they were sitting in her garden, Ethan turned to her, his eyes filled with love and admiration. You know, he said softly, you are the strongest person I have ever met. You have endured so much pain, so much loss, and you still have such a kind and loving heart. I am so lucky to have found you. She looked at him, her eyes filled with gratitude and affection. "Thank you, Ethan," she whispered. "I am lucky to have you in my life as well." And in that moment, something shifted between them. They had shared so much, laughed together, cried together, loved each other, and something had blossomed between them. It was not a love that was born out of passion or desire, but out of friendship, respect and admiration. They were two souls who had found solace in each other's company, two hearts that had been broken but not shattered. They began to spend more and more time together, going on walks in the forest, visiting the nearby town, sharing meals with the villagers. Ethan became a part of her life, a part of her world, and she found herself falling in love with him, not because she wanted to, but because she needed to. One evening as they were sitting by the fire, Ethan turned to her, his eyes serious. "I love you," he whispered, reaching out to hold her hand. "And I know this may not be the kind of love you were expecting, but it is real nonetheless. Will you marry me?" She looked at him, her eyes filled with tears. She knew that she loved him, that he was the best thing that had happened to her in years. But she also knew that her heart would always belong to Thomas. "I'm sorry, Ethan," she whispered. "I cannot marry you. My heart belongs to another." Ethan's face fell, but he nodded understandingly. He knew that she was right. He knew that her heart belonged to Thomas and that no amount of persuasion would change that. "Very well," he said softly. "Then let us remain as we are, friends until the end." And so they did. They remained friends, spending their days together, sharing stories, laughter and tears. And as the years passed, their bond only grew stronger. Then one day, Ethan fell ill. It was a fever that swept through the village, taking many lives in its wake. He lay in bed, burning with fever, his breathing shallow, his skin clammy. She cared for him, bringing him food and water, wiping the sweat from his brow, praying that he would get better. But Ethan knew that he was dying. He had seen the look in her eyes, the fear, the sadness, the resignation. He had heard her prayers, the ones she thought were whispered in secret, the ones she thought would go unanswered. One evening, as the sun was setting, he turned to her, his eyes filled with love and gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered, "for being my friend, for loving me." "I love you, Ethan," she replied, tears streaming down her face. "And I will never forget you." He smiled, his eyes fluttering closed, and then he died. She cradled his body, weeping softly as she felt his life force leave him, as his soul departed from his mortal shell. When the villagers came to collect his body, they found her sitting beside the grave, her head resting on the fresh mound of earth, her tears soaking the ground around her. She had buried her best friend, the man who had loved her, the man who had given her hope when she had lost all hope. As the years went by, the pain of loss began to fade, replaced by a deep sense of gratitude for the time they had shared. She had loved and lost two men in her life, both of them soldiers, both of them heroes, but she had also gained something in return, a lifetime of